It is question and answer time. Thank you for coming back and to hear another lesson from God's Word. The lesson is going to be sparked by the question that is on this paper. Now, there's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. There's 4 questions. 2 of them have more wording than others, so we already looked at number 1, but I'll read it again because it goes together with everything. So last time we answered this, number 1 was, a great way to utilize Facebook is to keep in contact with family far away and help spread the gospel of Jesus several different ways. One of these ways is to record Bible class and services. Is Facebook a replacement or acceptable worship according to God for attending services? And this person put Hebrews 10:25. So we already dealt with that. If you did not like the answer, or maybe you need more, you can give the question again or something related to it. But there's this next question that continues this thought. And it says, keeping in mind there is nothing new under the sun, Ecclesiastes 1:9. I have several questions concerning communion, and in my studies, just not sure. I was raised communion was done on the first day of the week only, but I was also taught and have studied it to be done with the saints as a whole. Matthew 26, Mark 14, and then in parentheses, the disciples, all of them, Acts 20 and verse 7, gathered together on the first day of the week. So here is the first question with that. Should we take communion at home, on vacation, or wherever we are watching it on Facebook and not in actual services? B, another question or another part that goes with it. This brings up another question. Should we do communion on Sunday evening for just a few when only a few of the saints are gathered together? And does not God understand why we were not at church? In other words, sickness, caring for a loved one. I do not think God understands we choose work over Sunday morning service. So, we are going to capture all that, and I'm going to answer that will, in a way that will hopefully clear it all up. Hebrews chapter 10, 24 and 25, we already looked at that heavily last time, but it was read again because it goes with our discussion now. Whenever the saints meet for worship, we should strive to be there. And so we are not to forsake that word, Greek word that's being translated, to leave behind. We are not to leave behind and just, throw in the towel. I just don't feel like going. It's not for me. I can do my Christian service by myself and that's it. When one has that attitude, that is sinful. We already talked about the exceptions, things that are out of our hands. Your car breaks down, you're sick, something of that nature. Traveling, you're not even here in the same city. So what do you can't travel over here, it's just not possible. We looked at those things. Should we offer communion on Sunday evening? Let me deal with that first. We are commanded to meet here for worship. However, we do not have a set time commanded to come together. The elders who are over us have saw fit that these time slots are the times that we come together. And if we are to obey our leaders, then we are going to respect their decision and we're going to come. If we did not have elders, that would definitely complicate issues because, we don't have leaders. And we can see the wisdom of God when Paul told Titus, go over there because they're lacking what? They need elders. Okay, so we see the wisdom behind having elders. But even if we didn't have elders, we would collectively decide, okay, when are we all going to come together? When is the best time for all of us to come together? There's a reason why we do not meet right at midnight when the day starts, because we're all asleep. We're not going to choose like a time that we know it's not going to work. So we're collectively think about a time that we're going to meet. Now, there are no rules broken. As long as we are in this day, there's no rules broken if we meet more than once. If we were to meet 3 times or 4 times, well, that's just more opportunity to worship God and to encourage each other. Hebrews 10:24 tells us that we are to stir each other up in love and good works. And so, more opportunity to do that. But we have to stay within this time frame in this day. We cannot decide, well, we're just going to have to meet on Saturday because no one can meet on Sunday. No, we couldn't change the day. But God didn't give specific hours. Actually, he didn't even say to do it for an hour. He just said, you need to do these acts. However long it takes to fulfill these acts in the right amount of time, that's what you need to do. And so, what times are we going to choose? How long are we going to do it? We have to do everything orderly and decently. Okay, that we're commanded to do so. And so, to do things decently, we're not going to say, well, sometime, I don't know, sometime in the afternoon, y'all, we'll just meet. Just plan on it. We need a time. We need to know exactly as much as possible, when are we going to meet? I mean, even the ancients had a way of figuring out what hour of the day it was. Okay, they didn't think, well, we're somewhere in the afternoon, don't know what hour it is. Okay, they knew exactly how to tell time. For some reason, the Lord's Supper has been the focus concerning like worship and challenging issues. It seems like it's the go-to, and there's nothing wrong with bringing it up, but let's not forget that there are other worship acts that come under this discussion as well. We cannot answer the Lord's Supper question without saying something about the other worship acts. The biggest difference, yes, is that the Lord's Supper is done only on Sunday. But that does not make it the most important out of all the others. Like, as long as we do the Lord's Supper, we don't have to do anything else. Just do this. That's not how it works. So, let me give you this example. If a member missed in the morning service, if we were to be consistent in this thinking that they cannot take the Lord's Supper in the evening, if a member missed the morning service, we would have to refuse that person from giving in the offering in the evening. Now I want you to think about this. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, 1 and 2 commands that we are to come together and collectively give of our means. That's why we do it on Sunday when we meet together. We're commanded to do that. Are we commanded to come together to do the Lord's Supper? Yeah. Are we commanded to come together to offer? Yes. So think about this. A member tries to put a check in that box back there, and we tell them, hey, wait a minute, don't do that. You weren't here this morning. We're not going to do that because it would be violating, you'd be trying to take away their worship act. Also, for the member who missed the morning worship, we would have to refuse the opportunity for that person to sing in the second service. Ephesians 3:19, Colossians 3:16, Ephesians 5:19, Colossians 3:16. Those two verses talk about how it's a reciprocal worship act. We are singing to God and speaking to one another, which tells us, oh, this is an act where we do it together. And so if a person does not come in the morning, and then they come in the evening, we would have to tell them, but you can't sing, you weren't here this morning. We wouldn't do that. Moreover, yes, we are commanded to meet together to worship, including the Lord's Supper. Let me give you a question. Answer a question with a question. How many members does it take for us to start the worship? Now, you don't have to answer. I'm just letting you have time to think. How many members does it take for us to begin worship and say, well, we are able to sing and give up our means and do the Lord's Supper because we have how many here? Now, that was brought up, something that they're battling when it comes to Mark 14. The disciples are all there. But my question was, are they all there? Now, when it comes to the lead disciples, the apostles, as they would be later referred to as, they're all there, yes. But Jesus had more disciples than just the 12 disciples. And in that same vicinity, why were they not with Jesus? Why didn't Jesus say, all of you have to be here? Why was it just the 12? So is it only the leaders that have to be here? Or is it all disciples? The point is, there's nothing rock solid there that really could tell us, well, because all the 12 were there, then we can't do it unless all are here. Either way, what if we were missing one member in the morning? If we must meet together, how many does it take to begin the service? If we waited till every single member came, we would never be able to take the Lord's Supper. Never. And then, if we partake in the morning, those few members that come in the evening, they wouldn't be doing it with us. But think about it. It's the same. We're in the same situation as them in the evening. When we took it in the morning, they weren't here. When they took it in the evening, we were not doing it with them. We're just offering them, okay, do you want to partake of the Lord's Supper? Now that you have the opportunity, here you are, and you give it to them. We're not doing it with them. So if they're guilty, then we would be guilty. The point is, there is no percentage. There's no number that says, okay, this sparks the permission to start the Lord's Supper. I heard of a church who had a snowstorm one time. And they have 100 members, right? Only 5 showed up that morning. So what are they to do? If 5 only showed up, could they have said, well, I guess we can't take the Lord's Supper because we only have 5. We need to have all disciples. You see, it wouldn't work. They ended up doing the Lord's Supper because, well, whoever could come when they came together, that's what they did. When we offer the Lord's Supper, we provide the opportunity for those to take it. It is the same for us here. Think about us. We have about 120 members. Now, that's not an exact number because, it fluctuates and depends who's all included. There's some who haven't been back, for many years, and we don't know what happened to them. Some moved away, and we didn't know. So we're around 120. Let's say in the morning, only 118 came, 118. And then in the evening, the 2 members who missed the morning, they came in the evening. When we took it, we didn't have those 2. When those 2 took it, they didn't have the rest of us. So either way, we just do the best we can to come. Now, if those 2 members missed for a sinful reason, or they just didn't feel like going, I don't like AM sermons, they're too long, or whatever, something like that, yes, it would be wrong. But are we going to go through a list of questions before we offer the bread and the fruit of the vine, and say, before I give it to you, you need to tell me why you missed the morning? We're not going to be able to do that. Now, it is for the elders, for sure, to oversee their souls and see why is it they're missing the morning, and we go from accordingly. But for that moment, we give the benefit of the doubt and say, well, okay, we're going to give it to you, and it's between you and God now why you missed the morning. All right, should we take the communion at home? Here's the next part of it. Get deeper. I like it. Good questions. Should we take communion at home? First, again, we must not look at the Lord's Supper as something as the top worship act. It is a very important act, and we must do it on Sunday. But it is not to the exclusion of all the other ones. We should not say, well, we need to for sure take the Lord's Supper, and as long as I do that, then I'll see if I can get around to singing and praying and doing everything else. No, we need to do it all. If you miss the service, are you thinking at least, well, should I take the Lord's Supper? But are you also thinking, should I sing? Should I pray? You got to look at all of them all at once, okay? I know that doesn't answer it, but we got to have some good perspective when it comes to the worship acts. Some ask, well, can I take the Lord's Supper by myself? Because they're doing it at home. Now, from what I have read, and I'm going to show you some passages, okay, I have concluded that it is not wrong for one to do it alone. If it is beyond their ability to come here. If it is the only way to partake of the Lord's Supper, then so be it. As long as it's not because you are blatantly forsaking the assembly. At the same time, I know that this becomes a conscience issue, especially for some, even in this assembly. And so you struggle with it, and certainly you should not do it if it's uneasy. Of course, you're going to keep studying on it. It is hard for me to believe, and this is something that's brought up, it is hard for me to believe that Paul did not partake of the Lord's Supper for 2 years under house arrest. Many brethren came to visit him. He could have partaken with them. They could have brought him the emblems. But again, I know it does not say he partook of the Lord's Supper. And so really we're left behind or left in the air whether that is really something we should use at all on both sides. Could we use that to say we shouldn't take it? Should we use that to say it's a possibility he did and we should take it? Either way, it is something to consider, but it's not a whole lot there. But I want to show you a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul is speaking to the Christians in Corinth, and he is dealing with the Lord's Supper. This is a passage that is read many times in the morning service, right before we take the Lord's Supper. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, starting with verse 27. Therefore, whoever eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself. He's going to be thinking. He's going to be thinking within himself the time that this is happening. So let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning, thinking the Lord's body. For this reason, many are weak and sick among you, many sleep, and so on. He goes on to other things. Now, think about this. This tells us that, yes, when they come together, so yes, we need to strive as much as possible to come together to do this. But while we're even together, each person has their own responsibility as what they're doing at that time. They have to be thinking about their life. They're going to be thinking about Jesus and his sacrifice. And if they are not thinking about those things, they are not partaking of the Lord's Supper. I am not able, as I'm taking the Lord's Supper and thinking about those things, I'm not able to discern and look around and say, whoa, most of the people here are thinking about lunch. I'm not even partaking with them then. I'm not able to do that because I have my own personal responsibility that's going on. So there's a collective aspect, and then there's a personal responsibility. Okay? What if in the assembly, I partook of the Lord's Supper and everybody did around me, but they did not discern it right? Okay? I would have to examine myself. Okay? So what does that all mean? This means that the person who partakes alone, granted they have the right reason for missing, it has to be something totally out of their hands. They're not able to assemble. It's out of their hands to assemble and do it collectively. But if they do it here, they still have this other commands that they have their personal responsibility to think about the Lord's death and think about their life. They can still do that. They're just not able to do the other aspect, but that has to be out of their hands. It can't be, well, because there's a personal aspect, why even do the collective? It can't be that way. So we have to be very careful. Now that's my answer. And if you're still not satisfied with that, as far as that's concerned, you can talk to the elders about whether we should be doing that or not, offering it at the evening or we can take it at home. But based on that, I have concluded that that's the answer. One last item for this discussion, question and answer night. It deals with, oh, I didn't even put that up. Immodest settings. Okay. And like I said last Sunday, everything worked out where this can now go with the morning lesson. Okay, so it's just an extension of what you just heard. And this person asked before I did that lesson in the morning, so they didn't do this afterwards. But the question is, why can I not take my children to a public pool? I'm going to go ahead and read question number 4 because it goes together. Why can I not allow my children to attend public school or homeschool dances? Okay. Think about what we went over in the morning, and this is going to build on that. Okay, so I'm not going to give all the scriptures over again because, well, that was a pretty lengthy sermon, and we've already had it, and you can refer back to that in the recordings. But building on that, the answer is going to be the same for both of them. Okay? It is true, based on biblical commands and principles, Christians ought not to go to places where everyone is just known to be half naked. Almost all naked or exposing some parts where everybody can see. If we know that there's such a place, we're going to tell ourselves we don't need to go there. And if the reason is to go there just to make memories, that's really not enough for us to say, well, that's an exception to the rule of God. God says, through the principles, we don't do that. You cannot say, well, because I want to make a good memory, then it's okay. Well, nothing in the Bible gives us that leeway. Modesty is taught, 1 Timothy 2, we look at Corinthians. You can throw in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 3, condemns lasciviousness, sensuality. And so we looked at all those. Ladies, what would we do? I guess this is another example similar to the one I gave. If we knew that all the ladies were coming in here with only their undergarments, what would we do? Would we say, it's okay? Now, you might be thinking, well, me, Josh, even saying that in the pulpit makes me shudder. Like, we shouldn't be even, thinking that's a thing. Yeah, because we don't want that to happen. It would be inappropriate. It's like almost daring for me to even bring up such a scenario. Well, we know that there's a limit. We have to stay within this rational limit. If someone comes in here half naked and doesn't have clothes on, they are outside of the boundaries of having a good mindset. They would not be expressing godliness. Okay, so if it's like that here, why would I say, but it's okay if I go to a place where it is like that? Now, I will say, this is something added to the lesson this morning. When I was young, I attended my school dances. And I've been taught in preaching school and other places, Josh, as a preacher, you don't confess your sins that you did in the past. Look, there's some things I did that were bad back then, okay? And I'm not bringing this up because I'm trying to confess and go through the whole forgiveness process already. I've already been forgiven for it. I've asked God for forgiveness. Why am I bringing it up? Because I know what it feels like. And I know why people go. I know why people go. It's not like, oh, Josh, he's never done anything like that in his life. How would he know? I know exactly what goes on in school dances. What? Because it's 25 years ago that all of a sudden it's different? I would say it's worse. The things that I saw when I went to the dances, even for a person that was kind of straddling the fence and saying, well, I'm just going to, not partake of it. I'm just going to stay in the corner or something like that. I went there, even for me, who was just willing to just disobey. Even I was like, whoa, I shouldn't be here. Like, there were things that were going on. The music that they played, It's not classical music, y'all. It's the popular music today that are very upbeat and has very bad lyrics. It is not like they're playing, there's a whole question here, well, what about Christian music? Well, it wouldn't even be a discussion because they don't play Christian music over there. Okay? I bring this up because I know exactly what happens. And I know exactly how I felt when I was there, when everybody around me was doing certain things. You think about getting young people, teenagers. You take off half their clothes and you put them there and they're dancing together to this sinful music. It's just not a good combination. There's no way that someone can say, well, it's because they're just having a good time. Look, sin is fun. All sin is fun. Now, that doesn't mean that everything fun is sin, but everything that is sin, we do it, we end up doing it. Why? Because it feels good. So the test of truth cannot be because it's fun, then it's right. If we were to have that mindset and be consistent with it, man, can you imagine all the things that we'd be doing? So why would a Christian man purposely place himself in a place known where the girls are going to be half-dressed and they're going to be dancing in a certain way? Why would a Christian woman dress less like that and dance like that? I would never allow my daughters to go and do that and to be in that setting and to have other boys look at them in such a way. I want you to look at Romans chapter 1. This is something I didn't bring up. There's so many verses to bring up, but let's go to Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, starting with verse 28. Paul is speaking to the Church of Christ in Rome. Now, beforehand, in the before verses, he's talking really heavy about homosexuality, which is a whole other lesson, but it springboards him to talk more about just sinful ways. Well, he's connecting it, but he's going to go into something else. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind, to do those things which are not fitting. He's talking about the homosexuality. But then he goes on in verse 29, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undeserving, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful. Now, our subject matter doesn't call for all of these sins, but I read them because you need to see in this one category of sexual immorality, the umbrella term, it's categorized in all these things. They're all the same. Okay? Wickedness is a general word. Covetousness is selfishness, doing what I want. Those three especially center around all this. And they are put in the same category as murder and evil-mindedness and backbiters and so on. Look at verse 32. Who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death. But here is where I really want us to focus in on. Not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. Now that's a very heavy portion of the verse. Because there are people who say, well, I didn't do it, but it's okay if they do it. And it's okay if I compliment them on going to such places and wearing such things. Now, I would never dress like that, but it's okay if they dress like that. I go to this verse. God says, you don't have to necessarily do it to be guilty. If you approve of such things, you're just as bad as them. I cannot, and that goes with all those sins. If I look at a murderer and say, well, he only murdered a few people. If I approve of such, I'm no better than him. And you can put that reasoning with all those sins there. And so when we consider people who are gathering to dress sinful, dance sinful, touch each other sinfully, we should not even approve of it. I know that this adds to the challenge for some, but hopefully this has proven at least that my care for you is great. And you know what? If we miss our school dances, guess what happens? We wake up and go to school. And we go on with our life. And guess what? It doesn't affect you in your day-to-day life. It's not like, I needed to go and now my whole life is ruined. If you're going there just for a memory, you're definitely going to remember it. And if you do not make it right, your memory is going to really last for all eternity, and you don't want that. We bring this out because of our great love. I know when I heard these things, I didn't like it, but I had to own up and take a deep look and dig into the scriptures and say, well, yeah, that's what the Bible says. It wasn't necessarily Josh, it was the scriptures he read. Yeah, we shouldn't approve of people doing those things. It says that very plainly. And so we need to let go of self, we need to let go of pride, and take heed how we hear the message. Well, that would go with really just any setting. I know I talked a lot about the school dances because, well, really that's the big thing right now. But, we're talking about like the public pools and things like that. Places where we know that it's just running rampant. I would even add in, in South Texas. I'm going to tell you really quick why this is such a big deal in South Texas. Because in South Texas, the normal summer temperature, we're talking about 110, right? It's hot. And so what do you think the big thing was whenever this lesson came up? But it's hot. It's so hot out here. I mean, how can we survive? And the preacher says, well, I haven't died yet. I'm clothed. What? We're just going to sweat a lot. And that's it. We'll still live. But it was hard because we had the beach there. We had all South Padre where everybody goes for spring break. Now, there were places in the beach that, a person can go and you be by yourself and nobody around. It's a huge strip of beach. But during spring break, for sure, as Christians, we would say we're not even going to go over there. We're not even going to drive by because of what we knew what was going on. You have to evaluate times and settings and the crowds and, your own limitations. You got to think about the person's soul. You got to think of all that. Well, if there's someone here who needs to make it right with God, maybe something has sparked something that you need to confess, make it right, or if you just need to become a Christian, knowing that God cares for our souls. God is not trying to take the fun out of life. He wants Christians to have fun. If fun was a sin, man, we'd have so much to confess for, but we can have fun. But God is just trying to take the sin out of fun so that we can be with Him in peace forever. If you're ready to be a Christian, let it be known as we stand and sing.